All right, guys. One Fun Guy podcast here live with History Buff in the house. Today's show is going to be sponsored by the Clubhouse Inc. If you like what I'm wearing, this is the boutique that I got it from. So it's the Clubhouse Inc. So if you like what you see, go to www.shoptheclubhs.com or www.shoptheclubhs.co. So I'm here with the History Buff. I'm super excited. We got a lot to talk about today. So go ahead, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so I'm not going to say my real name because it's kind of like a weird
Sure.
joke on my show. Nobody really knows what it is. It wasn't
Right.
intended to be that way, but so I'm the history buff, I guess.
Nice.
And I started a YouTube channel probably about 2.5, 3 years ago now, I think. And just started out covering music, but eventually I wanted to cover more original stuff, and that's kind of where I'm at now. I got a kind of a big enough base where I can branch off and kind of do the things I want to do, and so that'd be history, books, literature, movies, things like that. I love to interview artists, which that's kind of how we met in a way, right?
Correct.
We
Yeah.
were at an Unleash the Archers concert in Joliet, and there's this dude standing next to me, and we start shooting the shit. And I flexed a little bit, and I'm like, hey man, I interviewed her, and you're like, no shit. So I told you about my wait, can I cuss on here?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I told you about that. So then I showed you my channel, and then you subscribed right away, and then kind of the rest is history. And I say that, but I didn't hear much from you until like about a month ago, and you put on one of my recent things. You're like, I need to pick your brain about something. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I started looking up your channel, and I subscribed, and then I put two and two together. That was you. So
Yeah.
that's kind of our
So
that's
yeah.
kind
So
of our
I always.
past. So
So from the beginning, I always followed your stuff, and I watched the episode with Brittany, and I watched the episode with when you did the stuff with Sabaton and all the other stuff, because obviously that's the kind of music I like as well. So
good
yeah,
taste.
I was. But then when I started my podcast, I was like, who could I reach out to? And I was like, you got a ton of followers on your channel, so I was like, I'll reach out to History Buff and see what we can come up with. And it was awesome. So thank you for helping me out. I appreciate that.
Hey, no problem.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
if you guys are watching this show, go over to his channel because it's awesome. Like he's got a ton of cool stuff. He's interviewed a ton of cool people. I'm jealous. I wish I could do that, but he's got a great channel over there. So
Yeah,
head
we
over
got
there and check the stuff out.
Scott next week on
Yeah,
Friday. So, and I picked him because like everybody interviews Brittany. You know what I mean?
right.
Everybody interviews Brittany, and
Yeah,
Scott, he doesn't even have his own like Twitch stream or nothing. And I'm like, I don't even know what this guy sounds like. So I broke him out of his shell, and their marketing person was even like, "You sure you don't want to interview Brittany?" I'm like, "No, I'm done with
yeah,
Brittany."
right. And he's a
But no,
phenomenal drummer too. I mean, the guy is
oh, dude's
incredible. I mean,
insane.
they're talented musicians. I don't. I personally feel that they don't get the credit they deserve. That's just me. They're a big band, but like they should be huge, right? Like they're
That's
awesome,
not just you. It's criminal. It really is how
right?
underrated, how
You
under
know,
exposed they are. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of female fronted bands that are like mega huge, and obviously I think probably Nightwish, Lacuna Coil, maybe Arch Enemy are probably up there. But I mean, like they should be, right? Because they're really good as far as musicianship goes. Like they are incredibly tight, and it's just
I
like I don't know, like they should be way bigger, at least in my opinion, anyways.
Yep. It's all narrative driven. I mean, they're all geeks,
Right,
so she
yeah,
writes the albums are all about, epic heroes that go on these quests, and
sure,
it's power metal. It's
yeah,
cheesy,
exactly,
it's driving, it touches my 80s soul.
right, yeah, exactly.
Everything
Like
back then was badass and epic. So,
I agree. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Maybe one day they'll be asked to tour with like a huge, super huge band, or like head over to Europe to do a festival, and maybe they'll catch on that way. Because I think that's kind of the U.S. kind of sucks with festivals. Like Europe's where it's at. Obviously,
yeah, the
if you're
good
gonna
ones are over
play,
there. You want to
and
hear
even the
something
European.
cool? Yeah.
What's
You
that?
want to hear something cool is so
Yeah.
Ailstorm, they're also Napalm Records. So I said, hey, I want to interview Chris, the lead singer, and
Yeah.
he's also a big part of Glory Hammer. And she's like, well, they're on tour right now with Patty Gurdy. She goes, but what we can do for you is we'll set you up with you can go to one of their shows and backstage you can interview them. I was like, holy crap.
That's pretty awesome, right?
So yeah, so I have this decision to make. They're going to be in Atlanta, which is the close because I'm in Florida.
Right.
That's the closest I can do, and my wife's trying to push me to do it. And I'm like, God, I don't have any vacation time, and I don't have money for the
You know what though? At some
everything.
point, you got to invest in yourself. I mean,
But
that's a pretty
I
big,
can claim it on my taxes. Damn it! I bet I
right?
could.
That would be huge, honestly.
Wouldn't it be neat?
And
Yeah,
I know most of the people that are probably watching are like, who are these bands you're talking about? But if you can go and Google Unleash the Archers and see what we're
sure.
talking about, they are really a
Hailstorm
phenomenal band.
is pirate metal.
Yeah,
Um,
Ailstorm is awesome, and then
great
because
stuff.
they even, you know, because the pirate metal thing kind of stemmed a little bit probably from Amon Amarth, right? Kind of started the whole Viking thing. Would you agree? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there
they're
were
very
other
death.
bands, you know, prior like maybe Manowar was probably the pioneers of that. You know, back in the day, I mean, you
Yeah,
had four guys that were jacked and they just kind of wore loincloths and played power metal. So, I mean, Manowar was probably the band that like, but I think Amon Amarth for modern times was kind of like the band that like started the whole Viking type, and a lot of other bands just kind of split off from them. But I mean, as far as like, you know, wearing the gear and, you know, the battle gear and stuff like that, they were probably the originals, right? Or one of them.
yeah, I'd say so. And then you
Would
got
you
Brothers of Metal,
would you say so?
who's
Yeah.
another good one. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with
Yeah.
Man of War. I should be more familiar with them, but I'm not.
Yeah. Well,
Or
you know,
Amon
they're,
Amarth.
you know, they got their claim to fame, right? Because at one point, Motorhead was the loudest band in the world, and their
Okay.
Manowar's drive was to break Motorhead's record for highest decibel level. And so they just played louder, and they held the record for a long time.
You
That
gotta
they
have
might still
goals.
have it, if I'm not, you know. And then they kind of broke up and they did their own separate, like they were Manowar split, and they were like Manowar Steel was like one half of the band, and then, but I mean, as far as like old school metal goes, with like actually wearing like that kind of stuff, they were probably the originals of that kind of
Yeah.
genre, you know.
Yeah. So that's
But
pretty much it, man. I mean, you know, you know how hard it is to get into this gig.
yeah,
You start out, it's like your algorithm is nothing, and then
yeah,
how do you get followers? How do you get more exposure? How do you get the views and things? And
yeah,
so one of the cheap ways to do it, which I kind of went that way, is reaction videos. And in
hmm,
my opinion, reactors, they're like the bottom feeders of YouTube, to be honest. Like they really are. And it's kind of it's like de-evolved to the point where it's literally somebody just sitting here watching the reaction of another reactor, and they're sitting there like eating green beans, and that's their reaction. And people eat this stuff up, and it's like, good lord. I try to put
yeah,
some thought behind mine, and that's why the whole history thing came in, because I have a history degree in like medieval studies is kind of my in fact, fun fact, when I retired from the fire department, I was all kind of set with my undergrad, the way that all fell. I was going to try to get into the Medieval Institute of Notre Dame for a PhD
that,
track in medieval studies, which they have the largest collection of medieval primary sources in the whole country. It doesn't touch Europe, of course, but
right.
like, so I
That would
I
be
had a
awesome,
chance to study. I know. And then this EMS director position popped up, and I'm like, ugh. So school or money, which
right? Yeah,
so that's kind of where the history thing. When I started reacting, I'm like, okay, at least I could focus on historical songs, and like Sabaton and
yeah,
Brothers of Metal and things like that. At least that could be my focus. And then springboard that into actually stuff I want to do, because so I do have a handful of original things out there, original things I've made, and
yeah,
just either it's informative or it's just entertaining.
right. And
But
there's
nobody
always time,
nobody
right?
watches it. Nobody
You know,
watches those.
there's really kind of nothing but time. You know, it's kind of the platform that we all use. You know, everybody wants to do stuff now, but like if you kind of just plan it out, it tends to all work out. You know, in terms of what you want to do and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Even with my podcast, like we were talking about earlier. You know, I didn't want to be typecasted into the first responder kind of category, so I decided, well, I'm gonna branch out and interview a bunch of people, and it's worked so far. So it makes it more fun, anyways. I think the outreach is much greater.
yeah, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
And you can't please everybody, right?
Yeah.
And
You
sometimes
never
the
will.
history thing has bit me in the ass because I'll do something and they're like, "Oh, you're not much of a history. You didn't know this and this and you Americans." I'm like, "Oh my God, chill out,
Right.
man. Like
Yeah.
you, you don't
You know, and,
possibly know everything about everything." It's like,
right.
and I usually get in trouble when it comes to like World War II because everybody knows, like, I don't want to say everybody, but like the most studied part of history has got to be
Sure.
World War II. That and like the Roman Empire. So
Yeah.
you got these people that sit and just read the shit for fun, or they binge on the shows and all this other stuff. And like that and like Christian pastor, because anybody who's really big
Mm,
in a church will study that real good. So it's like if you mess up in any of those eras, man, they'll
yeah.
crucify you, man. It's like
Right. And
calm
then we
down,
all
dude.
know, right? This is your biggest, network now, right? Because
Yeah.
back in the day, you had to read books. Now you just Google, right? So, you know,
Yeah. I don't know what college is gonna be like. Like I remember them, we when we turned in papers, they were just starting to kind of look and see if they run it through this thing to make sure it wasn't
yeah,
copied and pasted from
right,
something.
right. And
Now
then
you got this
again,
AI thing where it just literally writes all the shit for you. So I
well,
don't.
a funny tidbit on a side note. We just got back from a cruise and we were hanging out with some friends of ours. And one of my wife's friends' husbands is getting a master's degree. And he put a thing in his AI to write a paper for him, got him a C minus. But I mean, nonetheless, it's like he didn't do any work. He just
They
put in a
didn't
few
catch
times,
it.
right?
They didn't even
So
know. Yeah. See,
I mean,
that's
it's
crazy.
bizarre that you could have now, because back in the day, plagiarism was a big thing, right? So you
Yeah.
had to put every little piece of information that you got from a paper and who wrote it, right? So if you took something, a transcript or something from a document, you put it in word for word, quote it, and then say as a side note at the bottom, this was taken from this article, who wrote it. But AI can go around that now. So it's really a bizarre kind of,
It is really weird.
you know,
And it's gonna do so much to different industries, man.
sure.
Great
I,
example. So like I wrote a book. Let me see if I oh yeah, I got a copy of it.
oh,
I
you wrote a
wrote
book?
this. Yeah, I wrote this book. Oh, there's my name. Look at that. But so and it's kind of popular. It's you get into what it is, but like I wanted to do an illustrated version of it, right? So I was talking to a buddy of mine across the street who's an amazing illustrator, and he would have been perfect style for what I'm looking for. And he's like, well, it probably about like $500 to $1,000 per each picture, and I'm thinking, well, that makes sense. It's going to take him a week to do it. Plus, it's going to
Mhm.
take a lot of his time and things like that. Now, dude, I can go to an AI and put
Yeah,
Thomas Jefferson flying on the back of an eagle,
right.
you know, and it's there it is,
Yeah.
you know.
So I mean, look at what's
So why
happening in
would I pay
Hollywood
this
right now,
dude $1,000 for one
right?
picture?
I mean, look at Hollywood. The
Yeah,
Screen Guild went on strike because they don't want AI to take over their work. I mean,
yeah,
screenwriting is cool, right? Because you take a book or a graphic novel and you turn it into a movie, and somebody has to write the script for that. But think of what AI could do. You could pretty much tell it what to do, and it'll write you a script in 30 seconds. It's
yep.
kind of bizarre, right? So it takes all the human element out of it, and all everything else with all these industries. They have restaurants now that are peopleless. The whole restaurant is robots and AI,
It sounds like Japan,
right? It's
something like they're
bizarre,
doing
but
probably.
it's kind of scary. I mean, it's kind of cool, right? If you think about it, it's like, look at the auto manufacturers. They went from having 30,000 union workers to having 10,000 because they have robots to put the cars together now. So all you need is people to fine tune it. It's kind of scary. And
Yeah,
it's been going on for 20 years. And now the hub is there. And they just
yep.
had a scientist on Joe Rogan's show. I don't know if you watched that, but he said by 2030, AI is pretty much going to take over.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's been a theory now for decades, actually.
Yeah,
Forget the guy's name, but he called that's where the term singularity comes from.
right. To
So because
2029. Yeah.
technology is logarithmic, it's exponential. So basically, when you have so much technology, you can use that technology to make more technology, and then use that technology to make more. So it doesn't go on like a path like this. It's like that. So
Mm-hmm.
and you see how computers were when we were young. I'm
Sure.
going to assume you're about my same age. I don't know. Are you in your 40s?
Yeah, I'm 45. I'll be 44. So yeah.
Dude, we're the same age. Okay, so
Yeah.
like, So you remember, computers back in the day and what they held. You know,
My first
it's like,
computer.
hang on one second. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah, sorry, but yeah, I know, like just how small,
Yeah.
you can like a terabyte of information. That's like insane.
Right.
And it's just gonna keep.
My first
I'm gonna
experience.
close my door. Hang on a second.
Yeah. Go ahead. So as I was saying, I'll wait for a history buff to get back. But my first experience with computers was I was in the fourth grade, and I remember distinctly because we had the big Mac computer, the Apple, and we played Oregon Trail on it,
Oh yeah,
and that was
you got dysentery. Yep.
right. That was when we thought that was awesome, right? We could spend hours playing that game.
Do you
And
remember? You remember microfiche?
no,
Do you remember that?
was that was the first floppy disk, right? The
Kind of. So the way that they stored mass amounts of information, like if you wanted to look up a Times article from 1956 and whatever, they would have all these little microscopic slides that you would pull out of this cabinet and you put them in almost like a microscope and you can read the article. That's how they stored it. That was
oh,
before the
wow.
internet. That was like the original
Yeah,
internet.
right.
They called it microfiche.
Yeah,
Like
because I mean,
nobody remembers that.
it's crazy to think that like like if you mentioned the Dewey Decimal System now, like
Oh, I
people have
know.
no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And
I
it's
know.
kind of like that's how you found books and articles and periodicals and
People just don't know, man. You
right.
wanted to watch a movie, you didn't just stream it. You had to go to the
Yeah,
video store or sit up and record it when it happened to come on. Yeah, I mean, we're boomering it up right
right.
now. You
I
know
know,
that, right?
right?
These young
Yeah,
kids
man.
are like, click. Listen to these
You know that.
boomers.
I will say access. We were talking about it on the vacation, but the access to the modern world right now. If you are involved in the internet and you're a preteen, the world is at your fingertips. Because I mean, if you can manage to make content on the internet by the time you're of age, you are now 5 years ahead of pretty much everybody else. And you don't need education now to do this, right? Because if your content has a lot of following, you can make way more money doing social media than you ever could getting a 9 to 5. And college might be a thing of the past, honestly.
Well, think about the entertainment industries too. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
see a shift, right? You're shifting from like Hollywood and
right.
like the music industry and the big record labels. And you're shifting now to the
Sure.
public sphere,
Yeah,
where I mean people get 99% of their entertainment now flipping through TikToks and
right.
shit, right?
You know,
And regular people are damn funny. Some of them are pretty
yeah,
good, you
right.
know,
And
funnier
talented,
than
right? People
yeah.
that can sing, play music, right?
And
I
some
follow
of
a guy
these
on,
like fan fiction movies that people have
yeah.
made for like Star Wars, it's better than
Oh,
Star
yeah.
Wars, it's pretty amazing. But same thing with music, you get
Right.
somebody like Ren or somebody who just starts doing something on social media
Yeah.
completely, or what, Tom McDonald. He kind
Yeah.
of did that whole independent thing
Yeah.
and just
He didn't need a label.
nope,
Right. So he did.
insane.
Yeah. So, Tom McDonald kind of took um, I don't, you're familiar with Tommy Vext, right? So
Who?
Tommy Vext,
No.
he did. Okay. So he was the singer Divine Heresy with uh, the guy from Dino from Fear Factory. They started a band,
Okay.
and he started another band after that called Bad Wolves, and he was really
Oh, I know Bad
political.
Wolves. I know
Right.
Bad
Okay.
Wolves.
So he was super political, and they kind of
Oh, let me
kicked
fix
him
that.
out. Oh, no worries. They kind of kicked him out of the band for his stance on things, right? So a lot of it had to do with COVID and the vaccines. And like I said, not to get political, but he went on his own as an independent artist and blew up and basically talked trash about the music industry and said, I don't need you guys. I don't need my own. I'll make my own record label and I'll sell music on my own. And now he's like up there. He's like, does the Tom McDonald kind of thing. So he makes way more money on social media than he ever did in a band.
Yep.
And he's kind of proof that you don't need the record industry anymore to make it. You do it on your own.
Well, it's like conservatism is the new counterculture,
Right.
So that's what seems to be skyrocketing pretty quick. you know,
Yeah.
because you can see all the other stuff everywhere else.
Right.
You know, you could see it all everywhere else, but
You
that
know,
that other message, you know,
yeah. And it's, and again, the thing is kind of like, punk rock's always been the counterculture, right? So, against the norm, but the norm now is so malleable, nobody knows what it is. So it's kind of a unique thing that it takes a mind of its own.
oh my gosh, I'm going forever about that, man.
Right?
Yeah, because in history we got that thing we call it the pendulum effect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's
It
and it,
always
and it
swings
has a lot
back.
to do with counterculture,
Yeah.
right? Because you swing really far in one direction. Think of the 80s were very conservative, the 50s were very conservative, but then
Mhm.
you always got a counterculture that backlashes like the 60s,
Right.
or the 90s, or however you want to put it.
Yeah.
And then once people get tired of that and they're like, whoa, we've strayed way too far away from the norm. I feel uncomfortable now. It's almost like you got that yard without a fence, and I'm
Yeah.
a little too far from home. People start wanting to be more conservative, so they swing back where it's safer, and then they're gonna,
Yeah,
it's
for
this
sure.
weird thing that happens. It's cyclical.
Yeah. It is. It's a bizarre thing that it kind of navigates in a weird way. But again, what we considered normal 20 years ago, we're far from it now. And so nobody know like what is normal. You ask somebody what's normal, you'll get 75 different answers.
And they don't even like the word normal.
Right.
It,
So yeah, it's
it's
crazy to think.
it's crazy. I don't know where it's going. I imagine. Well, I don't want to say too much, but I imagine
Right. I get
we'll
you.
see a couple different things come up in
Yeah.
the near future where it's going to flip, flip, flip,
Right. It'll be
or it could just
interesting
all go away.
nonetheless.
In my
Yeah.
book, okay, let me explain what this is.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Plug your book. I
I'll
didn't know
talk
you
about
had a
it.
book. I kind of want to get a copy now.
Yeah, yeah. So what this is, Flight of a Nation. So back in undergrad, I took a Chaucer class. If there's anybody I became an expert in LMI college, it was Chaucer. Like I studied the hell out of this guy and read all of his stuff and had to do a lot of things on like Canterbury Tales and stuff like that. So one of the projects was we had to write one of his stories in a modern idiom, basically,
Okay.
right? So he has a story called The House of Fame where the author is basically worried about when he dies, are people going to remember him, right? So he falls asleep, and he's carried in the arms of a giant eagle to the palace of the goddess Fame, right? I think he's a Roman goddess, and he gets to see, and the eagle's explaining things to him, like how Fame works and things. And okay, here's her palace. Her palace is made out of ice, right? And the blocks are made of people who have died before. Now some of the ice is in the sun, so it doesn't last very long. Some of the ice is in the shadow, so it might last a little bit longer. But inside all of that are pillars that hold it all up, which is basically like the church fathers. Obviously they were all very religious back then, or at least they had to be in literature, right? So like Moses and the 12 apostles, and those were the pillars that held up because they'll have eternal fame. But everybody else, you and me, it doesn't really matter how good we are, how bad we are. Fame is just kind of fickle, and it just kind of like grants a lot to somebody who doesn't deserve it and not a lot to people who do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this. It's a great story. It's one of my favorites. So I wanted to redo that one. And so what I did was I remade it where Thomas Jefferson was writing the Declaration of Independence, and he's worried about whether or not it's gonna work, right? And they all were. They were freaking out.
Sure.
It's a big step. Well, he falls asleep and he wakes up on the back of a giant eagle who is flying him out of London and kind of over the seas and towards America. And he starts kind of explaining liberty and what liberty means and what Jefferson thinks liberty means and all this other stuff. And when he hits the East Coast, he starts recognizing things immediately, but then it takes a very quick chronological and westward trajectory from there, and he sees everything kind of evolve and America kind of grow and things. He eventually ends up on I think Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
And that's where he meets Teddy Roosevelt. And he learns a little bit more about what's going on. Did I mention it's a poem too?
No.
It's a big poem.
Awesome.
It's written in Chaucerian. The meter is the same as House of Fame. So yeah, it's rhyming meter and all that. And so basically, in the very end, he watches the death of America, and he wakes up, and then he basically decides whether or not to continue writing it, to
Sure.
continue fighting. Here, you want to read the apart from it?
Yeah, yeah,
See if
go
you
ahead.
like this. See if you like this. Wait. So this is when he finds the eagle dying, right? He goes and he sees this beautiful garden, and Teddy Roosevelt takes it through, and he shows him all these statues of all these amazing things America's done. He's like, "Oh man, you really rejuvenated me. This is cool, you know." Um, but basically, let's see here. Okay, I'll start here, and you can hear how America dies. See, this is a very exclusive. Nobody knows this. Only if you're watching this will you know this, right?
I'm
See if
interested. I'm all ears. I'm
see if
excited.
this goes. Okay. So as I walked back down that solemn way, it was coming toward the end of the day. I rounded the corner, and to my surprise, the bird I could barely recognize. His feathers, it seemed, were mostly plucked out. His form was gaunt beyond a doubt. His eyes were hazy with cataract. His talons were gone. His beak was cracked. Great tercel eagle, be strong and great. Pray tell what led to this pitiful state. He answered, in youth my eyes could see all that is and were to be. There was a time when God on high was my compass and my guide. He helped all men together see their once collective destiny. Today, man's heart has many a God. In different directions they toil and plod. This is why I no longer see. Such is the price of liberty. You'll like this next part. My talons, once so sharp to slay any manner of foe or prey, have now grown dull and fallen out. Authority followed suit, no doubt. Child rules over parent. This shouldn't be so. Police and the army are shunned where they go. I can no longer fight or defender be. Such is the price of liberty. As for my feathers, this sad display, man used to seek and find a way to build me up stronger in power and might. Now they take all they can to their delight, without a thought of any return. Some are happy my colors to burn. I'm afraid I can no longer fly, you see. Such is the cost of liberty.
It's pretty apparent today, right?
And he dies. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
So it
pretty
continues
awesome.
on. Yeah. And
Where
so
could they find your book if they wanted to buy it? Can you get on Amazon or?
it's
How
yeah,
did
you
you
can go
get
to
a copy?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. So it's called Flight of a Nation, Dream Vision of a Founding Father. And yeah, it's not very long. It's about 35 pages. But yeah, like I said, so he actually witnesses the Civil War. He's flying in the sky, and it's lightning and
Sure.
stuff. They're trying to fly around. I mean, it's trippy. It's very trippy.
Nice. I like it. I'll have to get a copy.
Yeah.
So then let's segue in then to the first responder stuff. So tell us about like how you started in your career, where you began and kind of how you navigated it.
Yeah, so yeah, not too many people know this, but yeah, my whole life I've pretty much been a paramedic. And when I say my whole life, I mean I literally mean like my mom was teaching paramedic school and I was like a toddler. She didn't have a sitter, so I'd be in the back of the class like intubating mannequins and you know helping her lecture and things like that, you know, and it was so a very young age. And then I was in Explorers, I was doing ride time with the ambulances. When I was old enough, I went into like the Cook County morgues to watch autopsies and things like that. And, you know, just way too much for a young mind, to be honest with you, you know, looking
Sure.
back on it at least. And became an EMT at 18, paramedic at 19, which is about as young as you could possibly be for the amount of schooling you have to get
Sure.
to that. So, you know, very early I was dealing with horrific situations, you know, families burning up in fires and murder scenes and myself being in danger. You know, you've got a scene that goes bad, and you know, and that's honestly why us in police. I mean, you know this. We're tight. You know,
Yeah.
we're tight. We're part of the. We like as a fireman, we like to fuck around and be like,
Yeah.
oh, we're like, oh, the cops. I mean, we even had boxing matches
Yeah.
at the
So the
city
cut
I
the
worked
hoses, right?
under. Yeah, where you know you'd have fire department against police, you know, and
Yeah.
but it's good fun. And you know, but when it comes on to it on the scene, we have each other's back like
Yeah. Absolutely.
110%. I mean, I have personally taken care of police officers who were injured. I have testified for the police department in a couple of murder cases, or in a couple of cases where they were suing the police department, and I would go in and
Right.
testify for the cops. You know, meanwhile, I've got the police who have saved my life a few times. You know, a guy coming in with a knife, and next thing I know, there's a flash of light, and the guy's on the ground because they tased him or whatever. You know, and
Right.
it's just like people don't get it, man.
Right.
They don't get it, and it's like, you know, whenever I don't want to get too much into, but when everything was going
Sure.
down a few
Yeah.
years ago, I mean, it's very obvious which side I was on and which side I supported, and it's not really a matter of supporting both sides, just one side. I
Right.
mean, you know, you could do both. You can be a Venn diagram and see an issue with both, but it's like it was blatantly obvious politically where the
Sure.
focus was. But we don't need to get into that. But
Yeah.
you know, so yeah, so my whole life, and then I worked in the ERs for a long time, and then like I said, I retired from the fire department. That was pretty big city, right outside of Chicago. It's called Hammond. It literally goes
Mhm.
around the lake, right? You got
Right.
Chicago, Hammond, and then Gary.
Yeah.
So if you've heard of Chicago and Gary, you can kind of have an idea of how Hammond was, right? It was kind of like a nice merge of the two. So
Right.
I didn't live there, but I worked there. Let's just say that. So it was a rough tenure. You know, it was busy, a lot of nastiness, and so when I retired there, I became an EMS director for about 6 years before I decided to work for Amazon. So now I'm a regional safety manager for Amazon right now. So
Awesome.
yeah, just decided to get out of the medical field altogether.
Yeah, it's a tough go.
But
It's a lot of stress, hard
yeah,
on family life, difficult
yeah,
hours,
and it's kind of
hard schedule.
interesting. So like when I got my MBA, half of the class is really just discovering the kind of person you are. They want to make sure that you're a good leader, and they want to make sure that you know the kind of person you are when you're trying to lead people, and so there's a lot of self-reflection, and I learned a lot about myself where I was programmed as a paramedic my whole life, you
Sure.
know. And even in my marriage, my wife will tell you, I will take very good care of somebody for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
if she's having a bad day or she's in pain, I'll take good care of her. But after 20 minutes, you get annoying to me because that's how long I'm used to taking care of people. You put them in the back of your ambulance, you bust your ass, right? High
Yep.
stress. You either save their life or you don't, or you do you whatever, right? You're slinging
Right.
drugs at them, you're slinging
Right.
IVs, and,
Drop them off at
and
the ER. Right.
get to the ER and you're like,
What?
here you
Yep.
go. You know, my job's done. So it's like, so when you do that for so long, it really translates into the rest of your life and with your other relationships. So that was something I had to, with my wife, try to get over. But one of the main reasons that I, kind of reached out to you even to see if you want to be on here, because I know you talked about mental health,
Yeah.
and, for kind of like the first time in my life, I started experiencing an actual like crisis for me. And I know too a lot of people out there who truly suffer that through, like my wife included. I mean, it
Sure.
doesn't seem like much, but when I've always been super cool, level-headed, no, everything bounces off me. I've had my grandparents have died, and it didn't really affect me much. I'm just like, well, I never really see him anyway, so I don't see why I need to be
Right.
upset. Um, but then a few months ago, my dad passed away suddenly, and I got annihilated. Just it's almost like 40 years of just baggage and just grief and bad stuff that's just been sticking to me all these years. Just kind of wham. And I mean, right away, I mean, I was nonstop panic attacks, anxiety all the time. And I remember the first time it hit me, I was because when I found out my dad died, and it was sudden too. I mean, we weren't
Sure.
expecting it. So I live in Florida, and I'm like, the first thing my wife we got that phone call from my stepmom. She's like, "Let's pack the kids up, let's go." I'm like, "Okay." So I was a whirlwind, walking around my house, just grabbing stuff, and I'm driving, and first thing I do is I call my uncle, and we start talking, and it gets a little heated. And I'm like, "Dude, I got to pull over. I'm about to pass out. I can't breathe. My chest is killing me, and all that." So it just kind of went from there. It was just every day of that, just anxiety and this, and so months later, seeing multiple doctors, and I mean, it sucks, you know. And
Right.
I feel for anybody who has to go through this, and and it's really helped me understand, like my wife again. She would occasionally have anxiety and all these issues, and I'm thinking, okay, you'll get through it. Just think about this. And it's like if somebody said it to me, I'd probably punch him in the face.
Right. Yeah.
Don't get it.
So
I'm not thinking of anything.
right.
It's just
So the moral of the story with everything about the situations is you went and sought help, right? Because
yeah.
that's the biggest thing, right? When all the pressures are on you and all the adversaries in you, your first thought process is to navigate it yourself, right? Can I figure this out, or can I figure this out? Can my
I've been doing it
family
my
help
whole
me?
life. Yeah. Why would I
Right.
have to?
Correct.
Well, I
So
started. You start drinking alcohol.
right. Or you find
American.
other coping mechanisms. So
Yep.
the thing is that when you start to feel all the pressures of life, right, you turn to your family. Sometimes they can help, sometimes they can't. So when I was in my depressive state after my surgeries, my wife was a enormous help for me, right? She was kind of like, we'll get through this no matter what happens. We'll make it work. Don't stress out about it. You can only do what you can do. Like, she was a huge network and support for me. And then I had one guy that I met was a military guy, and I talked to him for about 5 hours. He's on a road trip one day, and we spent the entire day talking. He had been through the same kind of situation that I went through, except he was shot in action, in combat. And we talked about our recovery, and he was like, listen, I made it through it. You can make it through it. You're a strong guy. You're a tough guy. You can do it. So talking to those two people, my wife and him, were like an amazing thing for me. But I was in a really bad spot for about 5 weeks where I didn't know where my life was going to go. The doctors were basically telling me that I might never ever go back to work again. And I didn't know how to handle that, right? All I knew was law enforcement. It's all I'd done for the
Yeah.
past 15 years of my life. So all of a sudden I have professionals saying, this might be the end of the road for you. And I didn't know what to do, right? All I thought was that up until this point, now I failed myself, right? I'm never going to see my career end. I'm never going to see my pension. I'm never going to see, and my wife was a huge staple for me, getting me through that to help me go. And then the guy I talked to, I won't mention his name, but he was a huge support. I think I'd mentioned it a couple of times before. But I don't know if he'd even mind, but I'll go ahead and say it was Kevin Flake. He was an Army Ranger, and he's awesome. He's a superhuman dude, and he didn't know me from Adam, and he took my phone call. We emailed a few times. He's like, I'd love to talk to you. He was a huge support network for me, but I reached out, right? So that's the thing, like, with all like first responders, that I always say is ask for help. Sometimes you need it. As strong, as tough as you think you are, asking for help is by far the best way to go. And you sought professional help, correct?
Yeah. Well, my wife kind of she
Right.
helped
But
me push me
yeah,
towards. But yeah, no. I mean, I was just kind of, oh no, I'll be through this. They'll be fine. Let me just. I just need another drink, or and so I finally saw it too. And it's weird too because like when the biggest problem with all this was when my dad died. I think what I started doing was finally thinking about death in a very cerebral way, where before, I mean, I was so exposed to death. And I mean, I didn't even mention when I used to work as a tissue procurer, where I would go into morgues and things and remove eyeballs and skin and bones from people and things like that. I mean, I did that job for a handful of years. So I mean, it's like death was huge for me. You know what I mean? And so like when my dad died, I never really thought about it. Like to the same way when he did, I started thinking, oh my God, what were his last thoughts? How long did, and this is even taking the spiritual part out of it. Like, let's say that
sure.
whatever, how long does the brain fire and how long, and then when it stops, how do you even know it stops? Because there's nothing. And I just, my brain started, and I know you're Catholic and I'm Catholic too,
Mhm.
so you want to,
Yeah.
believe in that stuff, but you really just start thinking a lot. And then like, I was even in line with my son at Universal, and I started feeling like chest pain. And I'm like, oh my God, what would happen if I dropped right now? Would my son know what to do? Would these people behind me help? And then I would whip myself into another panic attack. So it's just, I started thinking a lot about
Right.
death. And then what that does is it messes your stomach up. So then I started thinking, holy
Yeah.
crap, do I have some kind of stomach cancer? I better go get my first scope, which I haven't, and it just, you know,
Yeah.
and that's how
100%.
I've been for like for like months, just constantly thinking about death. And when you have these panic attacks, people tell you, you feel like you're dying. Like you literally like, this is it. This is it right here. You know what I mean? And what's kind of helpful, I downloaded um this app where you kind of do SOS, I'm having a panic attack.
Okay.
And the way that they focus, and maybe this is how all professionals focus on anxiety, is like the best way to tackle anxiety is to just literally accept it. Just meet it head on and be like, when you're having a panic attack, just be like, dude, I want you to, I want my heart to explode. You're going to make me stop breathing? Make me stop breathing. I dare you. You know, and you just kind of like let it do as much as it can.
Sure.
And the more you accept those feelings, the more they dissipate, if that makes
Okay.
sense. Um,
So I've never had one. Can you kind of walk us through like what it feels like almost? Is that possible?
well, okay, just imagine. So, like, if you got, like, so let's say generalized anxiety, you know, and you just kind of feel like this heightened level of nervousness, right? And then you start to feel a sensation. For me, it's like chest pain. And I've been recently, this is kind of what started all this. I went to the hospital and they ruled out cardiac. I stayed overnight. They're like, dude, your heart's perfect, you know?
Okay.
So I'll get chest pain. And then I'll be like, and then right away my brain starts, oh God, here it comes, you know. Oh, I'm with my son. Wait, where's my wife? You know. And then I start to, and then the first time it really hit me, it felt like someone was pouring like hot paint on me or something. I could feel it, like my arms went numb, you know, and then I just feel like I'm going on a roller coaster. It's just all of this together,
Hmm.
you know. It's really strange. And then you feel like you're kind of going in and out of it. Am I gonna pass out? You know? Yeah.
So now, like, if you feel that sensation, you kind of know what's happening. Like you could prepare
Yeah.
yourself for it. So it's
Yeah. And then so part of the problem too is, you know, my I saw this doctor and he put me on medication, right? So the certain medication, I mean, okay, it's Zoloft. I guess I could say what it is. This Zoloft, he didn't tell me this, but like that first week is hell. It says if you're taking this for anxiety, your anxiety and panic attacks are going to be like through the roof. So just buckle down and be ready.
okay.
So that's when it got really bad. Today is day 7.
Okay.
So I had
So
to
this is
take,
recent, right?
yeah. So
So
I had to take other medication just to kind of keep everything at bay. And today is the first day I haven't had that other medication. And knock on wood, I feel
okay.
great. Like I was out on my lawn, washing the cars. I mean, cooking dinner, and I feel really good.
Awesome.
So
So now
they said a
what
week.
is right? So what's the outlook for this? Like what is like long like short term versus like long term? Did you have an idea?
Well, I mean, I think
Did,
unfortunately there's a backlog to talk to somebody. You know, the
okay.
person I saw is a psychiatrist who just gives medication. I mean, they ask you questions, you could talk about what's going on in your life, but they just kind of use that to be like, okay, here's a good med for you, you know. Um, but if you actually want to talk to somebody who's going to help you unravel your issues, there's a huge wait list, you know. So
Sure.
I'm kind of been put on this wait list, and I think that's going to help out a lot. And I think even talking like this helps, you know,
Okay.
kind of get it out there a little bit and just explain it. And I read it's in that app again. They send these emails to you occasionally, and one of the things it says in there that was really interesting is like, you know, you don't ever really like beat anxiety. The only way to be cured is to just accept the feelings that you have, and you
Okay.
know what I mean. It's just your everyday feelings. That's how you feel. And then you don't think about them, and then I guess it's not anxiety. It's really weird. It's very
Oh, that's
paradoxical. You know what I mean?
yeah. So now when you say you're like on a wait list, is that to talk to like a psychiatrist or is that to like further your medicine or kind of
No,
both
that's to
or
talk. That's to talk to like a
like
you know, somebody
clinical?
you sit down and you
Okay.
really unravel your problem, and
Sure.
that's probably what I need. You know what I mean? I don't think I properly grieved my dad passing, and you know,
Okay.
just a lot of stuff from my past. You know that just always shot off me like a like bing.
Yeah.
Went through a horrible divorce. Bing. You know, uh, custody issues, and you know, and
Okay.
yeah, it all came crashing down.
Sure. So do they like when you first have your meeting, do you like ask like because I don't know, I've never been, do you ask like what your outlook is for the future? Like do they kind of navigate that or like,
Well,
do
it's
you
early to
kind of
tell. It's
is
early to tell.
too early to tell?
He's kind of like because a lot of this is linked to my GI. He's just kind of
Okay.
like, let's get all that because I have to get a scope and all that good stuff.
Sure.
He's like, once you get a clean bill of health, then we know this is just anxiety. You know,
Okay.
because then I get this weird thought in my head. Well, maybe this is my body's way of saying something's wrong because I've never felt this way before. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it's also coincidental. It's right when my dad died. I don't know. It's just
Right.
it's crazy. You know what I mean? So they're like, just get that clean bill of health, and then we'll know, that
Sure.
this is just generalized anxiety. And he even said, he goes, this is temporary. He goes, it really is. I have a feeling once you kind of sift through what you need to, you'll feel much better.
Do they talk about like maybe like having hobbies because you have the podcast and you have the music, like does that stuff help, like, or is that?
Oh, for me, does it help?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, anybody who's watched my channel knows I haven't really posted anything. I haven't posted
Okay.
anything since this happened. I mean, when my dad passed, I talked to my wife about, maybe doing a Sabaton video about Vietnam and just kind of honoring it to him kind of thing. And,
Okay.
besides the thought of that and interviewing Scott, haven't really done anything. I just haven't had the
Okay.
drive to,
Sure.
and I had to say it, a big part of this too is just worrying about what other people like. I know how I feel. Are other people going to know this? Like when I'm at
Right.
work too. And I'm sure
Sure.
this is how you felt too, being a police officer. Like, holy
Yeah.
crap, they're going to look at me and be like, you're not fit to serve, or at least today, and they try to be nice to your
Right.
face. Like, oh no, we understand. But you might be wondering back in the mind, like, oh man, I don't want this guy out there with a
Yeah.
gun. You know what I
So what
mean?
I did all the time that I was off of work with my surgery, I kind of wrote a journal, and my attitude was that I was going to make a collection of things and write a book. That was my like goal, was to try to like identify my struggles, what was happening medically, how I felt in my headspace, and then kind of put it all together. Because from the time I had my first surgery to the time I had my last surgery, it was like a roller coaster of life because I didn't know what was going to happen next. They told me that when I had my first surgery, just to sum it up, I woke up with an ostomy bag and a catheter, and they pretty much said that this might not be irreversible depending on how your body recovers. So the reality that I might have an ostomy bag for the rest of my life, just it freaked me out. Like it was devastating morally because I was like, how am
Yeah.
I going to live life with this bag hanging off of me? Right? I don't know how I could do it. So the doctors basically said, until you're strong enough to get it off, we have to keep it on, which ended up being 9.5 months. So after that, they did the reversal surgery. And when they did the reversal surgery, all my blood in my body just kind of went all over the place. I had a bunch of complications. I had just a ton of issues, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. So I just started documenting everything. I was like, well, if this is the way I'm going to go out, at least people kind of know what I'm thinking, what I've experienced, and what I've done. So
Mhm.
surviving all of it and getting back to it is kind of was my coping mechanism. And then when I first started going back to work, I started really getting into podcasts, right? Because just laying in bed all day, I didn't want to watch TV. I'm like, what could take my mind off of it? So I started listening to a ton of different podcasts, and it was always in the back of my mind to start it. I was just kind of always gave myself excuses why I couldn't. Oh, I don't have the right equipment. I don't have the time. I don't have this. I don't have that. And one
Oh
day
yeah.
my wife was like, you've been wanting to do this for a long time. Why don't you just go ahead and hit play and see what happens? And that's how I started it.
Just do
So
it.
a month and a half ago, January 23rd, here I am, first day ever. I went live and I said, this is going to be my show. This is my name. This is what I do. And so now I feel like I'm an open book, right? People have more access to me. And I've never
Yeah.
had that before because, as being a first responder in law enforcement, you want to be private. You don't want anybody to know anything about you, where you're from, what you do, you kind of bottle it in. And so this has kind
Right.
of been my outlet because now I get to talk about certain things, and I don't go into specifics, but, I've just like you, I've seen enough and I've been through enough to say, hey, listen, I could maybe help you out, or maybe I could be an earpiece for you if you need to talk. And that's kind of my lifeline to you is if you need anything from me, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's, you know, kind of having similar backgrounds in what we do, like we probably have more in common than we ever thought we had,
Well, we know the music thing for sure,
right? So
which sucks
absolutely.
because I don't have any concert buddies all the way down here in Florida to go to. I've gone to my last two concerts alone.
Yeah, that's
Actually, my next door neighbor I take that back. He's awesome. I just met him probably a couple months ago. He is huge into everything we like.
Nice.
So
That's awesome.
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's great to have that like support network because like obviously one of my best friends is a big metalhead too, so we go to shows all the time together. So it's kind of nice. But the thing for me is with my health, I have a hard time standing, so I got to find venues that have seating or like availability to sit, and then availability with a bathroom in case I have to go. So it's kind of difficult because I can't obviously those mosh pit days are over for me.
yeah,
You know,
right.
so standing room only doesn't work for me. So I can't go to a concert unless there's seating and bathrooms available. I'm out. So I'm kind of in that weird unique
Yeah.
position where like I have to really strategically plan everything I do. So even like on vacation, right? I just got back from a cruise. I knew where every bathroom was. I knew where like all the emergencies were, having to change of clothes just in case. It's just a weird way to live life, but it's doable, but it's not easy. So
Yeah. Well, God bless you, man.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and
So
it's funny too, because as you do, you're gonna notice when you do this, and it seems like you've got a lot of motivation now. It seems like you're kicking out a video almost every day. It seems if it's not
yeah, I
something
try to
that's
go.
just
Yeah, I do a
reaching out to
podcast
people.
once a week where I have a guest, but I
Yeah,
try to go live at least when I'm not working because obviously my work schedule doesn't allow me when I get home to do it. But I generally try when my days off, I try to go live as much as I can just to be relevant. And then I
yeah,
use the other platforms, social media platforms to do it. So it's
yeah,
just kind of a unique perspective on things that I never thought was, when I started my podcasting, I thought, hey, I'll go do a podcast once a week and I'll just put it up and that'll be it. And then I realized that it's a very, very slow go of doing it that way. So getting people to watch you and subscribe and like your stuff, you kind of have to put yourself out there. And I've learned to do it. So,
yeah.
you
You
know,
do.
and luckily, my wife has her own business, so she's been doing it for 7 years now. So I've seen her do it. So she kind of
Yeah.
taught me all the tricks of the trade. But it's just like you really have to put yourself out there. And I was kind of uncomfortable doing it at first. Now it's kind of just second nature for me to do it. So I kind
There's
of
so much, man. There's so much. Like, I know what was big when I started. You know what I mean? StreamYards is I like StreamYards. But
yeah,
like there's so many other stuff now.
yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know if I want to delve into all of it because
It's
no, it would
tough,
make my channel better.
right?
But
And so that's the thing. Like, and like we were talking before, like I used my wife's Facebook page for 4 years. All my friends knew me as her because I would use her page. And then as she started to grow her business, I couldn't comment on it because it's like you can't comment on your own page. So I said, well, maybe I'll just start my own Facebook page just so I can comment and share your stuff. And that's all I
Mhm.
did for a long time. I was like just incognito. I had an obscure name. I was Bebe on Facebook, so it was pretty much like impossible to find me. And so
Baby.
now that I'm doing the social media stuff and I became the One Fun Guy podcast, well, now I have started a TikTok, I started an Instagram, I started another Facebook. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like now I'm out there in public, right? I'm in the limelight, I'm in view of things. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit unique to do that because you put yourself out there, right? Because if you don't, no one's going to know who you are. So
Yeah.
it's a weird thing, like so obviously, you showed your book, right? So your name was on the book, right? I don't know if people know my name or not. It's kind of irrelevant, but it's just, I want to protect what I do and I want to protect the people I work with and the everything that goes along with it. So that's where my kind of like, safety comes in. I don't really want to, put myself out there in that capacity. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. I've
know,
had my kids on a few videos here and there, but yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons I don't not crazy about people knowing the name and
right. And
they
so
know I
that's
live in
how I
Florida,
was.
but that's about it.
Right. So obviously my first guest ever was my wife because I wanted to promote her business. And then we kind of explained becoming an entrepreneur, how
Mhm.
difficult it really is because, you have all these gurus on the internet saying, oh, start your own business, be your own boss. And they make it sound like all you need to do is it's hard work. Like it takes a lot of dedication. And, I'm preparing my podcast for the future, right? So when I
Mhm.
retire, I'm hoping it starts to boom in, 5 or 6 years when I walk out the door and I've fulfilled my service, to the department that I could say, okay, now I can really start my podcast because I have the platform to do it. Because with having less than 100 subscribers, I'm not going nowhere, So
You'll
that's
hit that critical mass where
yeah. So
it'll
that's what I'm hoping, to
it's
do down
honestly,
the
dude,
road.
it's it's going to take the right guest, the right, you find a guest that already has a channel that has like 50,000 something
Yeah,
on it. Me, I don't know if this will be able to help you at all.
sure,
It might
absolutely.
not,
Uh,
Um,
any little bit helps,
but
and that's
but you
it.
find like the right person, the right, and then
Yeah,
you might even figure out, you said you don't want to be in a niche, but you might end up in a niche, you might find out,
right.
hey, this is what people want to hear,
Yeah,
you're still sworn in, so you can't go too far in the political
right.
realm of things. But honestly, that's like, if I didn't work for Amazon, I'd probably be there,
Yeah,
doing the political stuff because
yeah.
people eat it up.
It's true because I was on TikTok the other night live. Somebody said the same thing. They're like, maybe your straightforwardness and your attitude, maybe you should do that. And I'm like, I just can't delve in it. Like I need to protect
Yeah.
both sides of the spectrum. Maybe down the
Yep.
road that's something I would do. But like, so ironically enough, I did my 2 shows ago. Me and my buddy did a wrestling thing, right? Well, all these wrestling podcasts now are like, you want to be a guest on our show? Do you want to be a guest? I'm like, sure. Let me know when you do it, I'll be a guest. But it opened up a lot of doors because the wrestling community is huge, like the music community, right?
Right.
So, you have guys on YouTube. I'm sure you're aware of like Tank the Tech, that
Oh yeah.
he was a roadie for all the bands. So,
Yeah.
he's kind of got that, field mindset. But I didn't know the wrestling community, like people scoped me out for that. And I was like, this is awesome, right? Because
That's
all we
really
did it
cool.
is for fun. And there's people that have dedicated wrestling podcasts that are like, be a guest on my show. I'm like, sure, just let me know.
I mean,
And
there's guys like Officer Tatum, or
yeah,
I mean,
Tatum, right?
you can
Brandon Tatum's
find
the
stuff
same.
like that. Like one of the
Yeah.
things I'm trying to do right now. So, like, if you see here, I'm a lifetime member of the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society,
Okay.
and like those guys are amazing. There's these two guys, Sean Brandy, Andrew Lehman, who have been running the whole thing since the '80s,
Okay.
and they do these dark radio podcasts. They've done movies, they've done audiobooks and all kinds of stuff. And I'm trying to get them, number one, to narrate this book.
Okay.
So that's kind of hopefully in the works. And I want to get them on my channel.
Sure.
So like that's where I'm really trying to grow. I'm trying to
Yeah.
grab these like big name people who are willing
Right.
to talk to me. And so again, it's really just probably finding the right people.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then when that happens, I could springboard into, because I've already done like a couple of HP Lovecraft videos,
Right.
so I can start focusing on that, and
Sure.
it's just, there's a couple authors that I've reached out to. One guy is like dying of cancer. I'm like, dang it, like I feel bad for him, but
Right.
I thought I was gonna get him on. But yeah, just keep cruising,
Yeah.
man. You'll get there.
That's awesome. So how about we do this? I have an idea. Since we're coming up on our hour and it went by like this, how about we do this? Maybe next month I'll have you on again and we can kind of track what's been going on with you and see how you've navigated this anxiety problem, and see if we can, maybe you can tell people like what you did. Maybe you could help somebody else. If that works, we can figure
Yeah,
out if you're comfortable talking about your journey. We
that's
can
cool.
maybe put it out there and go from there. That'd be awesome, I think.
I'm an open
You
book
know,
mostly.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because I appreciate you being on and talking about it, because a lot of people don't. They shut down and they're like, I don't want people to know. I don't want it to go public. I don't want it, to. So you doing this is a huge help, and I'm sure somebody watching it somewhere down the road that felt this way, that didn't want to go get help. Maybe they can now. They will. They could say, yeah, these people do, support us and what we're doing, and we can get help. So, it's kind of a weird thing, but I was watching a video real short the other day, and one of the guys I follow, he said, if your podcast or your whatever you're doing can do 3 things, it could either entertain, it can educate, or it can empower. And I always try to do one of those 3 things, whether I'm entertaining, whether I'm educating, or whether I can empower somebody. But I think this kind of does all 3. So if we have you back next month, maybe you could just help us navigate, your journey, and maybe
yeah.
it could really help somebody and that needs it.
I appreciate it. Oh, that's good, and thank you for letting me vent.
Awesome. Yeah.
Works
So
out
is there
good.
any other things you want to plug besides your podcast? I told everybody follow you on History Buff on YouTube. You got your book. You want to promote that? You're more than welcome to. I'll get a copy of it, and maybe I'll
Okay.
send it your way to sign it. And
Yeah, History Buff on YouTube. I do most of my stuff on YouTube. I do have a Twitch
sure.
handle too, but that's, occasionally
Okay.
I'll because what I'm learning is you destroy your algorithm when you try to like stream a game on YouTube or something,
Yeah.
or even do something live. So I'm trying to do more stuff over on Twitch, but I think
Okay.
that's like Tom Servo 78 or something like that. It's something a little different,
All right.
but Yeah, no, that's really bad. I do have a Patreon too. I mean, there's some things in there. I actually go through all the books I have and
Yeah, plug your
kind of
Patreon. And
a little tour of the office, and
because
things
I'll
like
tell
that.
everybody
So,
on this to share all your stuff, and I'll plug you once I put this live, out on
yep,
YouTube. So, anybody can share and go to your page and look, and I'll tag you on everything. So
yep. And I've even done a thing on my Patreon, like for those people, if anytime you ever want to do a like what we're doing right now, do a video with me, or if there's something you want me to either watch or react to or analyze or something, we can do it together, and that kind of thing. So, yep,
awesome. Well,
absolutely.
thank you so much for being on my show. I really appreciate it. And like I said, we'll schedule a date and we'll put it out maybe next month. We could do something, and then maybe the month after we can just kind of track your journey and see what we can
Cool.
come up with.
All right, man. I
Awesome.
appreciate
Well,
it.
thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. And History Buff, you've been awesome. So I appreciate it.
Same too. One fun guy.
All right.
That is your real
Catch you on the
name.
next one. All right. Thanks
All right.
everybody
Bye.
for watching. I'm One Fun Guy Podcast. I'm across the platform. So you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, One Fun Guy Podcast. Thanks, History Buff. We're going to end the show now, and we'll see you guys later.
Okay. Bye.